Hey guys, this is Thomas over here, nursemoneytalk.com, and in this video, I'm going to talk about 10 ways you can deal with anxiety as a new nurse. But before I get into that, if you're not already subscribed, I want to go ahead and invite you to hit that subscribe button on this channel. I talk about all things related to nursing student, and of course, nurse life. The second thing is that if you are a new nurse, I want to encourage you to check out the new Nurse Academy. You can get to it by going to nursemoneytalk.com/new Nurse Academy. Link will also be in the descriptions below. And I'll talk a little bit more about what the new Nurse Academy here is in a little bit, because it is a course that's geared towards preparing new nurses. It kind of bridges the gap of where nursing school left out. Let's go ahead and get started, because as a new nurse, I know from experience that anxiety can be a very strong pain point. And for some of you guys, it can be very crippling, right? I think that there's a lot of ways you can handle anxiety. I think those different ways, or the ways that there are, will vary from person to person. Some ways are going to be more beneficial for other people. Some people will have some options, and some people won't. But let me go ahead and run through some 10 different ways. And I'm going to start off with a couple of the very obvious ones. I'm going to give you a little bit of my own take on them, but they're said a lot because they're often very much ignored, but they can have some of the biggest impacts. The first one is to get enough rest or getting enough sleep. I think the benefits of sleep in terms of your overall health, anxiety, general well-being, I think is documented and very much well known. I'm not even gonna really stress so much on that. What I am gonna stress on though is encouraging you to actually do something about it. Now, depending on how you're wired, right, you could fall into a couple of different camps. You could be the type of person where anxiety, either through racing thoughts or whatever the case may be, like that will force you to lose sleep, right? To not be able to sleep well. Or you can fall under a different camp where it's not so much like you have the anxiety, but it's not so much that it's keeping you from not sleeping. It's more or less that you have bad sleep habits. And if you would change some of those habits, you could get better sleep, which would potentially help you a little bit more with your anxiety and managing that, and just kind of like your overall well-being. And so I think knowing where you fall in that camp will dictate what you should do, right? So if you're the type of person where you just have really bad sleep habits, like you're, whether it's, related to maybe you're just waiting way too long to go to bed, so you're just not getting enough sleep in general. Like you have to be up at 5 and yet you're going to bed at like 12 or 1 in the morning, and that's a constant habit. Depending on what you're choosing to consume, and I'll get more on that later, that can have an impact, if you're depending on what you're consuming, right close to when you're going to bed. Maybe with your cell phone, the bright lights can, mess up with the circadian rhythm. And so that can cause you to have sleep problems. And I'll put a link to some articles that'll talk more about like good, proper sleep habits in the descriptions. But you could also fall under another camp where it's just you're doing a lot of that, but the anxiety is just keeping you from going to bed. Like you are literally, you could be going to bed like at 8 or 9, but you're just staying up, like just not being able to fall asleep. And so at that point, I would really encourage you to really look at talking to a primary care physician, and let's just start looking at what are some of the things that might be able to be done from a medical aspect to be able to get you to where you're sleeping better. For some people, even something as simple as maybe like a melatonin can potentially do wonders. And depending on where you're at, it might not even be a whole lot. It could just be even like a little bit of a melatonin or something or whatever. that might be able to just kind of help you sleep. The second one is really looking at exercising more. Once again, this is something that is well documented, the benefits of exercising in terms of the physical health, but there's a lot it can do for your anxiety. Harvard Medical School listed out on their site, they listed out some benefits of exercise when it comes to easing anxiety. So one of which is, exercise, like especially if you're somebody who's having like racing thoughts, can divert your attention, so it can get your mind away from those things that you're thinking about that are causing you anxiety. Exercising itself helps with decreasing muscle tension. Your body's contribution to just you feeling anxious. They also talked about, when you're exercising, right? Like it actually changes up like your brain chemistry in terms of the neurotransmitters or neurochemicals or whatnot that are like released during the process. And just like there's just an overall benefit to exercising in terms of like anxiety relief and help, or just helping you manage your anxiety. And some of this can just be started with just the like little things here and there, whether that's like walking, maybe like every evening, you just like take a walk, take a walk for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes or something like that around your neighborhood or whatnot. Just kind of like the little things to start kind of contributing towards it. The third thing is to really look at your diet, right? Certain diets, or certain foods, I should say, can affect your mood. Certain foods can just either help you feel better, feel good about yourself, or certain foods can do the complete opposite. One example of this is really looking at, so for instance, like let's say, I think celiac is an obvious one. But what if you don't have like celiac, but you have a gluten intolerance, right? And so you just don't feel good when you have so much of it, or even if it's just like dairy products, or maybe, eating eggs that just causes you intense gas and that you just don't feel as good. And so I think these are some of the things that really you can start looking at and either minimizing it in your diet, depending on what it is, or just getting it completely out of your diet, depending on what it is. And even looking at drink items can interfere with your sleep. So the two big ones being like caffeine and alcohol, like seeing how consuming those so close to when you're about to go to bed can just cause you to not sleep well. Now, I know some people will argue, well, I can drink a cup of coffee and be able to go to sleep without any issue. I think it's important to note the distinction, because other people will throw the same thing out when it comes to alcohol. I think it's important to note the distinction between, there is like being able to sleep, right? But being able to sleep and get restful sleep, and sleeping and it's not restful sleep. Because I think there is a difference between the two in terms of how you feel the very next morning. The fourth option is really look at you as a new nurse being able to educate yourself more. In terms of what you don't know. Now, if you look at what generally causes anxiety for new nurses, right? You're really looking at, it tends to be like the gap in knowledge, right? So I don't know what the hospital policy is for X, Y, and Z. I don't know what to do when patients who have these conditions come in. And so I think like as you bridge the gap between what you don't know and what you know, you will feel a lot of your anxiety just kind of minimize. And I'll talk more about that in a later point. I think one of the things you can do to minimize that is to look at the new Nurse Academy course, nursemoneytalk.com/new Nurse Academy. Like I said, it bridges a lot of the gaps that cause a lot of anxieties for new nurses, right? Things that are related to maybe like documentations, IV insertions, even looking at some YouTube channels where it comes to how do you talk to physicians, like what you should do, like how do you prioritize to make sure that you get everything done that you need to do. I think these are some of the things that you can do to really help speed up that process of you knowing more and therefore reducing your anxiety. The fifth point is really look at shifting your mind and your thought process. This goes back to what I said about like racing thoughts, like we think the very worst is gonna happen. I'm going to, what I just did is gonna do X, Y, and Z. It's gonna do X, Y, and Z to this patient. It's like we jump to the worst, most negative outcome. Some of this can be relieved for talking to other people. Others, it's just kind of being able to just kind of break this negative cycle. This is where things such as deep breathing techniques, grounding techniques, even a situation where I've seen where like being able to go to a place where you can maybe just kind of like stretch. So if you have somebody who can watch your patients or whatever, just kind of be able to step off, get off of the unit, maybe go to the break room. I've seen people doing this during like a stairwell. If you work in a big hospital where they're just like stretching or something like that, I think you can definitely be able to just kind of get some relief as you're just pulling yourself away from what's going on to really be able to clear your mind. The sixth point is really looking at giving it some time. I mentioned a little bit more on this earlier, and that's that anxiety is normal. It's a normal response. There's actually a lot of benefits from if you want to call it from an evolutionary standpoint, that comes with the anxiety response. And a lot of it will go away. Probably for most of y'all, probably nearly all of it will go away on its own. A lot of these tips and kind of like the stuff that I've mentioned and stuff that I will mention is about trying to kind of speed up that process or being able to keep the anxiety from getting out of control. But if it's just a gap in knowledge, right? If it's just a gap in knowledge, eventually you're going to know more. And because you know more, you will be less anxious. That's just going to happen, right? The seventh point is to look at talking to a therapist, right? You could also go the route of talking to friends, but I think I tend to prefer the therapist route if you're somebody who honestly talks a lot and you just need to really talk things out. You can burn people out really, really quickly, right? And just in terms of friends, whether it's like spouse, partners, significant others, parents, whoever, whatever. And so check out nursemoneytalk.com/online therapy. It's a platform where you can actually get hooked up and connect with a therapist online. And so a lot of this is not even about you going to like an actual therapist's office, but it could be on your phone, Zoom call, or whatever. So check it out, nursemoneytalk.com/online therapy. Link will also be in the descriptions below. I mean, I think the benefits of therapy, it's just one of those things. It's very much well documented as well. The 8th point is to find a mentor. There's a lot of benefits to mentorship, I think, from both sides, but even from the one that's being mentored, right? It goes back to the other point about a mentor can help kind of fill in some of that knowledge gap. They can help in terms of somebody who you can, bounce off ideas from, talk to, and so, be like words of encouragement. There was I'll link to an article, it was a research paper that talked about how like emotional support from experienced nurses to new nurses is very, very beneficial. There's a lot of benefits that comes to that. And a lot of it is just from that anxiety relief too. Number 9 is really looking at reviewing your work-life balance, right? I think new nurses will often overdo it, right? So you've been in school for God knows how long. You've been not making any money. You got student loans. You might have family, blah, blah, whatever the case is. And so as soon as you can start working, you are working. You're working a million hours, getting no rest, and the hospital's letting you. They will use you and abuse you if you let them. Even if it's your own detriment. And what I would encourage you is to minimize how much you're actually working out if it becomes too stressful. Like I know some of y'all are hustlers, and you say that the anxiety won't get you. And if that's you, more power to you. But even you will have a breaking point at some point. And so if that becomes the case, look at taking a step back, taking some breaks, just only working 40 hours. If you are stacking up on vacation hours, use your vacation. People need to take more vacations. Like, I'm not even saying going anywhere, or you don't even have to spend money, but I'm just saying, like, you can just have a staycation, right? So many people I will see, they have stacked up an ungodly amount of vacation hours, and I keep thinking to myself, for what? Like, most of the, like, I don't get it. A lot of times you'll end up losing that because if you leave, the facility won't give it to you. Even those that have a policy where you get it, depending on how long you've been there, right? They typically won't give you all of it back in cash. If you end up transferring or leaving, you lose that vacation hours. I remember at one point it wasn't a lot of hours though, but I had gone from full-time to PRN. I think I probably had like 40 hours, 50 hours in vacation time. And those hours, as soon as I made that transfer, those hours were gone. I didn't get any bit of it back. And so your hospital policy might be different, it might be nicer, but I would just encourage you to really look at it and just make sure that you are taking care of yourself. So the 10th option is, if all else fails, you might have to find a new job. And here's what I mean by this, right? So if your anxiety is related to your job, like maybe it's the specialty. Maybe you might have to switch to a specialty. Like if the ER is just too much for you in general, there is no shame in that. There's a lot of millions of options out there. Well, yeah, a lot of options out there as a nurse. That is the beauty of nursing. Switch. Maybe it's not the ER, it's that department. Or that ER, you want to go to another, like an ER in another facility, another hospital. Then do that. Check out the job board, nursemoneytalk.com/jobs. Find another job. Like I think it's one of those things where you really just have to assess if it's a wrong specialty. Is it the wrong facility or department? I think that's one of those things where, like, give it some time, see how it's going. And if it doesn't look like it's getting any better, then at that point, then there's options. There truly, truly is options out there. But if there's another advice you've got that I missed, let me know in the comment sections below. Thank you so much for watching. I would really appreciate a thumbs up with this video, and I'll catch you very soon in that next one.